back to Used Bike Reviews. I'm your host, Peter Monshizadeh. Nostalgia is a powerful thing, and if you're old enough to remember the 90s, then the bike we have today is sure to bring back some memories. It's the Kawasaki Ninja ZX7R. Released for the 1996 model year and ending production in 2003, the Kawasaki Ninja ZX7R saw a far longer production life than most sport bikes. Characterized by its twin headlamp design and gaping dual ram air intakes, the bike has a menacing appearance. In its heyday, it was often seen on the podium of World Superbike races, AMA Superbike races, and Club Series sprints alike. There were two versions of this bike released, a P version and an N version. The N version had an RR appended to the end of its name and sported a single seat, flat slide carbs, adjustable swing arm pivot, and closer ratio transmission. The P version reviewed here has a passenger seat and more street-friendly manners. The biggest difference between the two versions today is price. No matter the version, the ZX7R serves as a reminder of a time when 750cc machines were the superbikes that every aspiring rider dreamed of owning.
First thing you feel when you get behind the handlebars of this bike is how wide it is. Handlebars a little bit wider, the gas tank's a little bit wider. They just feel right to me. So this bike is carbureted. It's got 4 carburetors. It's an inline-4 engine. So throttle response isn't as crisp as a fuel-injected motorcycle, which, you know, everyday riding, it doesn't really matter. So at the back wheel, you'd be lucky if this bike would turn out 110 horsepower. I mean, it's not a powerhouse compared to today's even 600cc machines. I would call the power output on this bike more than adequate. It's plenty to have fun with, but it's not so much that you're going to be getting in trouble every time you crack open the throttle. It's got so much weight on the front that it just doesn't want to do wheelies, and it certainly won't be doing any power wheelies. With the stock gearing, that is. These little mirrors, they're kind of funny looking little stubby things. They work as well as sport bike mirrors will ever work, but the cool part about them is like they're designed specifically for this bike. They've got short little stocks on metal painted frames, and these little, they're kind of like rectangular. They don't have like any real design trait to them. It looks very 90s. As you can see, the gauges on this bike are all analog. Something you won't see on this bike is a fuel gauge or even a low fuel light. So keep track of that trip odometer every time you fill up. The fueling on this bike is pretty good, although at lower RPMs, and when I say lower RPMs, I mean really low RPMs, from 1 to 2,000 RPM, right about the time where you're engaging the clutch, it's kind of sluggish. And it almost wants to die. Granted, it could be just this particular bike and the pilot jet's not being very clean. But you get it above 2,000 RPM and the engine responds beautifully. But anything from right in this area, see, I'm actually giving it throttle and it's dropping in RPM. So it's probably, could just be the carburetor on this, but you know, anytime you have a carbureted machine, you get some wonkiness in lower RPMs like that. One of the characteristics of 90s sport bikes are these jungle gyms sitting behind the front windscreen. See this? Man, I don't know why they didn't come up with a better fairing stay, but you'll see these on the GSX-Rs and other Ninjas of this time period, and you're like, what in the world is going on here? When you're riding, you don't actually notice it, you don't ever see it. The thing about this bike is it's super duper stable when you're in a turn. So here we go, going to set up for a turn. Granted, the brakes aren't super strong, but you just set up for the turn, you can lean in. The chassis isn't upsetted as you're like going through the turn here. You just set up for another turn, kind of. It's a perfect back road bike. You're not going to be setting any screaming lap times of the track. but you will feel like you're going fast and having fun on a back road on such a bike as this. This is one of the few 90s bikes that hasn't started to go up in value. Unless, of course, you get into the RR range, but you don't need the RR. The RR is a bunch of stuff that sounds good on paper, but in the real world doesn't really make any bit of difference. You can still get into one of these for about $3,000. Maybe a little bit more for a pristine low mileage one. But if you look hard enough, you can find one for cheap. The RR version has already started to skyrocket in value, just ridiculous. Right around 4,500 RPM, you can hear that induction noise. The front brakes on this bike aren't super duper powerful, but they work just fine. I mean, if you upgraded to some steel braided lines and some better pads, I'm sure it would just transform the braking performance of this motorcycle. But for example, just take a look at the brake lever. Can you see this? How much I'm moving it? I mean, that doesn't exactly inspire confidence when under heavy braking. Just all that play, all that movement. It's like, what's going on? The rear brake, I mean, it's as good as a rear brake will ever be. It can lock it up if you want it to. So this road has tons of potholes, and this bike just kind of soaks them up. It's definitely more oriented towards the road than it is towards the track, which is nice. Of course, suspension can always be changed if you want it to be more taut, but I think this is just sitting on the stock settings, and it just soaks up things pretty well. Of course, this thing has a lot of weight to help you soak up things. It's not bouncing around because it weighs a little over 500 pounds, and then you throw yourself on it, depending on how much you weigh, you add some more dampening to it. So it's a pretty smooth ride. Your feet are really high on the pegs on this bike, and it's not adjustable, so you just gotta know if you're a taller dude, it's gonna be hurting a little bit. And also the distance between the foot peg and the shift lever is pretty small. So if you're wearing riding boots, you might find yourself getting a little bit tight in there, almost stuck sometimes. And you'll be taking your foot out of that little space in between shifts just because it's so uncomfortable to hold your foot at that angle. Believe it or not, this bike actually came with a slipper clutch from the factory. Yes, all the way back in 1996, Kawasaki was putting slipper clutches in their standard motorcycles. So stock, you'd never know it was there because the only way to activate the slipper clutch is to install thinner metal clutch plates. Standard, the thicker plates are in there and make it seem like the slipper clutch isn't there at all.
Mechanically, these bikes are very robust, and all the metal parts have a certain heft to them that make the bike feel solid going down the road. The valve train can make a diesel-like clatter at idle, but as long as the engine sounds sweet in normal running, you're in good shape. Hot starts can be difficult at times due to an overheated starter relay, and winter riding can be hindered due to carburetor icing. The tail section has an unusually large cargo area, and the driver's seat has a quick release for easy access to the battery, fuses, and tool bag. The electrical system is a low point for these machines. Unlike most sport bikes, these actually have a generator external of the engine casing. Electrical gremlins can pop up if left in damp conditions, as many connectors and wiring throughout the bike are left exposed to the elements. Fuel pumps are known to go out without much warning, and ignition switches can become finicky. Cosmetically speaking, it's very difficult to keep these machines looking good. Painted finishes are easily scratched, including the gloss-finished frame. The stock exhaust system is known to rot if not cared for, and bolts and fasteners can quickly rust if the bike is not stored indoors. You shouldn't let higher mileage bikes scare you so long as they've been looked after. The less owners the bike has had, the more likely it is to be in good shape. It's important to remember that even the nicest ones are reasonably priced, so don't simply buy the first one that comes along. At the bike's current market value, it isn't worth restoring a neglected one. The ZX7R isn't going to win you over with all that horsepower or handling finesse, but it's more like a time machine that takes you back to the 90s superbike craze that you remember.